Hey, this is a trendy socialite. I hope all is well with you. Alright, here we go. My first installment in the A New Year, A New You series, reading the book of Proverbs in the month of December. But before I get started, let me tell you what happened to me today. OMG. Okay, so I'm leaving work and I'm walking down I'm approaching the stairs, getting ready to walk down the stairs to go and leave. And something happens, I lose my footing, and literally, y'all, I fall down like the entire flight of stairs at work. I mean, it's only like 5 or 6 steps, but I'm talking about legs sprawled out. I mean, it was not a pretty fall at all. And I hurt my bum, and I think I may have twisted my ankle because it's very, very tender and sore right now, but more than anything, I bruised my ego. Oh my God, because it was like the busiest time of the evening and there were people just walking, bustling back and forth and coming into the building for meetings. My nerves were torn up. To the matter at hand, how many of you have, I hope everyone has read the first chapter of Proverbs today, and excuse me, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it and comments below after you see this video and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to that interaction. For me, let's see, where do I want to start? When I read this chapter, and you'll see by the title of this video, I really thought of Mr. T when he used to say, "I pity the fool." Because this basically, to me, is God saying, okay, alright, I'm getting ready to give you some life lessons, some things that you need to do and not do, and say and not say, that sort of thing. But you don't listen, then I don't know what to tell you. Oh well. I mean, and that's basically like how he ends the chapter. You know, if you don't listen to what I have to say, if you don't obey me, then you're going to be left to your own devices. But if you do listen and you do obey, then you'll be secure and without fear of evil. And that's the last verse in chapter 1. So yeah, I really thought of Mr. T. I know that's weird, I'm sorry. When I was reading this chapter, because it was encouraging. It's basically like a word of admonition. It's kind of like saying, okay, I love you, I want you to be wise, I want you to have this great life, but if you don't listen, this is what's going to happen. And there, God does that. I mean, he gives us basically fair warning, so we can't act surprised when our stuff is jacked up. Because, and it talks about it in this first chapter, sort of about your own choices that you can make, or that you do make. I think the first thing that jumped out to me was verse 5, which says, "A wise man will hear and increase learning, and a man of understanding will attain wise counsel." I am a huge fan of wise counsel. Definitely a fan of wise counsel. That no one can go through life. I mean, even the President of the United States has counsel. I mean, he has a cabinet. He has people, that advisors and those sorts of things. No one can accomplish anything in life without some wise counsel. Obviously, first the counsel of God, but then secondarily the counsel of others, especially those that know us, and know us well, and that are wise and mature and morally upright. So that was one of the first things that jumped out to me. And then jumping down to verse 7, which is sort of the crux to me of this whole chapter, is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. And God in heaven knows if that ain't the truth. I mean, this one thing that this verse is saying is that you don't want to be a know-it-all. And I know I'm sure you've heard the saying, you can't tell them nothing, because they think they know everything. And that's what this verse is saying, that when we don't act like we know everything, when we're able to learn, when we have that teachable spirit, That is the beginning of knowledge. That is the beginning of knowing what to do and how to apply it to our lives. But a fool, meaning an unwise person, meaning someone that's simple, which is something, another word that they use in this chapter. They despise all of that. They don't want to hear that. They want to do whatever it is that they feel like doing, whatever it is that they want to do. They do not have a teachable spirit. And that is the person that is hardest to work with, that is hardest to get along with. Is a person you can't tell nothing. You can't tell them anything because they are just so dogmatic in what they believe. Like you just can't even reason with them. And you just don't want to be that person, and you don't want to be around that type of person. Like verses kind of 7 through 9 talk about being teachable and listening to instruction of others. Because, and it says in my Bible that knowledge is plentiful, but wisdom is scarce. Wisdom means far more than simply knowing a lot. It is a basic attitude that affects every aspect of life. The foundation of knowledge is to fear the Lord, to honor and respect God, to live in awe of His power, and to obey His word. And that's what it means to fear the Lord. It doesn't necessarily mean, it's sort of kind of the same fear, if you will, that you have of your parents. If you grew up with parents like I did, like there was just some stuff you didn't do because you were like afraid of how your parents were going to react. Grandparents, aunties, all the same thing. Whatever guardian you had, there were some things, some lines you didn't cross, some things you didn't do because you were afraid of what they were going to do. And that's the same sort of fear that we're supposed to have of the Lord. It doesn't mean like, you're hiding behind anything. It just means respect, and like I said, and awe, and what it said here. That's the kind of fear that you're going to have, that you should have for God. And when you have that, then that makes you, essentially what that does is it makes you humble. It makes you open. It makes you ripe for God to teach you things, God to show you things. And it's the same way, even when in a work environment or in the church environment, anytime you have to deal with people, when you, once again, act like you know everything, nobody can tell you anything, people are not going to want to work with you. They're not going to want to tell you anything because you think you know everything. So why should I show you something that you think you already know? I may have a better way. I may have a shortcut. It may take you 2 hours. And if you do it my way, take my suggestions, it'll only take you an hour. But I can't tell you anything. So, and I don't tell you anything. So that's what happens when we have a fear of the Lord. And it's a healthy fear. It's not, like I said, that fear that comes from being abused. Verses 10 through 19, that was kind of like that woe be unto you type of scriptures. Those verses were like, okay, saying do not, and basically all that's saying is watch the company you keep. That's a lot of what that is. That is just watch the company you keep. I know my parents always tell me that. I didn't always understand it. If I had the experience and the maturity now that I had at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 years old, I would have saved myself a lot of trouble. You hear me? A lot. And basically, the verses 10 through 19, that's what it is. Watch the company you keep, because a lot of people do not have your best interest at heart. They want to basically pull you down to their level. They want you to get caught up in stuff that they're caught up in. So they can say stuff like, see, I told you she won all that. I told you she didn't love God the way she thought she did. I told you, he wasn't really as committed or as down for his relationship with God as he claimed to be. That's a lot of what that is. Now, starting in verse 20 is the first time we really start to hear about wisdom, and it's kind of personified. It has this being and it has this character about him. In verse 20 it says, wisdom calls aloud outside. She raises her voice in the open squares. And in that, that verse, God is giving wisdom like this character, this persona. You sort of imagine wisdom sort of standing out in the middle of this crowded area, calling out, hey, come talk to me, come learn from me. One thing that I think is important to know about wisdom is that it is not a separate being. It is not separate from God. It's not something that is, you have God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit over here, and wisdom's over there. It is the mind of God. Wisdom is the mind of God and how He reveals it to us. And in James 1:5, it talks about, and I'll actually have it, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. So that's essentially what we're doing by reading Proverbs this month, is we're asking God for wisdom, and He's going to give it to us freely and liberally, regardless of where we may be at this point in our life. We can absolutely still right now ask God for wisdom, and He will give it to us. It just goes on to talk about wisdom, and it talks about how God will pour out His Spirit on us if we take His advice, if we take His counsel, if we obey Him and we do what we're supposed to do. He says, but if I call you and you refuse, if I stretch out my hand and you regard, then when your stuff blows up in your face, don't come crying to me. Same thing our parents told us. You think you know everything. When your plans go awry and when stuff just does not work out, don't come crying to me. And that's essentially what God is saying. I've offered you my Spirit. I've offered you my counsel. I've offered you, opportunities for wisdom. And if you shun all of that, then you basically are creating your own path of destruction. And it may not be a physical destruction, but even spiritually and morally and emotionally and psychologically, to have that sort of separation leads to what I don't think is a very fulfilled life. I mean, you may be happy, but that joy that I talked about in my intro to Proverbs video, I don't think you're not going to have that on a consistent basis. And so the closing verse of Proverbs chapter 1, it says, whoever listens to me will dwell safely and will be secure without fear of evil. And that is a promise. That's a promise from God to us, which means that He will keep us. And there's so much, especially in Psalms, talking about dwelling in the secret place of the Most High, and God, hiding us under the shadow of the Almighty, and Him kind of setting us up and apart from all of this stuff that may be happening around us. Stuff may even be happening to us to a degree, but when you're in God, when you obey Him, you actually dwell safely. And it talks about in I think Isaiah about if you're overcome with something, that the flood waters won't overtake you. You won't even smell. If it's a fiery situation, you won't even smell like you have been in it. You won't smell of smoke or anything like that. And that's because you obey God. You walk with Him, and you are learning and applying what you're learning in the scriptures and in this book of Proverbs. So that is sort of my take and what I got out of the first chapter of Proverbs. Like I said, I can't wait to read your responses below. I'm so excited about this. And be sure to leave them below. And if you have any questions or anything like that, you can either send me an email or send me an inbox on YouTube, or leave them below if you want to as well. I want this to be an interactive discussion, so don't just wait for me to respond. If someone poses something and you have something to say, please feel free to jump in and respond to them in that regard as well. And like I said yesterday, if you want to post a video response with what really stood out to you in this scripture, by all means, because this is just what stood out to me. And everyone reads things differently and comprehends differently. And so you may see something that I didn't see, but that could help me as well. So that's what this is all about. That's why I wanted to put this out there, because we can all help each other. in this regard. Alright, so I love you all. I'm going to drink my hot tea and save my voice to be able to do another video tomorrow. Okay, y'all take care, be blessed, bye.